How much does it cost to start a coaching business? We're going to talk through that.
As entrepreneurs and business owners, we know that if we have a clear plan, anything becomes possible. And if you can have a clear plan, a clear process to create that plan, and a way to create clarity with your partner or spouse, you can drive to amazing heights.
So when it comes to starting a coaching business, it's amazing how low you can get into this, how little it costs. Now, you can spend 100 grand if you want, but you can get away with not a lot of money to start off with. So when you're looking at coaching businesses, there's a few different ways you're going to look at it. But first off, you need to define what type of coach are you going to be, what type of experience do you have, what are you bringing to the table. Now, there's all sorts of certifications and different things that you can get out there, and it depends on the area and coaching you're going after. In some cases, you may actually be required to have a degree, maybe a master's, maybe even a certain amount of hours. Maybe you have to take a test. So if you use it as an example, a law practice, well, there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through to start that. That's going to start a lot. That's going to cost a lot more, particularly when you're looking at the actual cost of getting the education and the requirements for it. You can also go other routes if you're not looking for a law practice, but let's say you're looking for augmenting an existing practice. So maybe you're already a trainer in certain areas and you're looking for some sort of certification. There's ways that you can augment that for a lot more reasonable price. Actually, one of the courses we offer is through Life on Your Terms. This is a sister company, and we offer a place where people can dive in, and we provide certifications that help people have a process and tools that they can walk through step by step. But in general, when you think about what a requirement's going to take, you've got the legal requirements, and then you also have the success-based requirements. And that's the primary one I'm going to look and suggest you keep an eye on. Obviously, stay in compliance and don't get in trouble with the law. Do what you're supposed to. But ideally, what is it going to take for you to be successful with your clients? That's probably the cornerstone. There's all sorts of certifications. People spend $100,000 just on certifications. When you have those certifications, then it establishes it that you're an expert in something. Now, if you're already an expert, well, you may be pretty good. But I've worked with some people, some younger people, man, they had the right word is chutzpah. Holy smokes. These guys didn't have a lot of experience. They didn't have any certifications. They didn't have a degree, and yet they were good at helping people. Primary reason, they were really good at listening. And by listening, they could understand what people needed, they met them where they were at, and they started coaching them to get stronger. I've actually brought in a couple of these people under my wing because I loved seeing how aggressive they were with things, how they were fearless, but they also were very, very curious on how well they were learning, which to me was fascinating. But when it comes to figuring out those certifications, figuring out where those areas that you have a unique gift, the next step is for you to start figuring out, well, who's going to value what you do? What is the unique niche that you may bring to the table? So for me, as somebody who's been in business for over 35 years, I speak business person really, really well. But I'm also pretty good at helping people look at their life in a different way, challenging in a positive way. And by that nature, I can help work with high-end CEOs on a holistic level for them to become better people, better teachers, better leaders. Now, does that fit for everybody? No. But the fact that I got a little bit of gray hair and I've been around the block and I've got a track record means that people are willing to work with me on that. Now, if you're looking at starting, well, maybe you have the track record and you've been in private sector and you're in transition, it's not that big a deal. So part of it is going to be defining what you're good at and where you want to work. Now, and we talk about this in other videos on this channel on helping you to define what is the ideal niche for you. I'm a big fan of driving down further and further into niches. You find much more success when you do it that way. So first off is creating the level of, hey, this is who we are, this is what we're great at, and this is why people trust us. Certifications, experience, whatever that is. So however much that costs. In some cases it may not be a lot. In some cases, for just a few grand, you can have a whole bunch of tools at your disposal. But once you have that, then you're going to need to look at actually building the business. And building the business, you can start a little bit. And the IRS can be forgiving and for about the first 6 months to a year. So if you're sort of testing the waters and figuring stuff out, you can kind of do it and sometimes ask forgiveness, not permission. It's not ideal. You should have certain things to have that you make sure you do a CYA, cover your backside. And to do this, to start figuring out exactly what you need, that's the whole purpose of this channel that you're on, is the Aspiring Solopreneur, which was my original book. And we have a full online course that step-by-step walks people through this. But the beautiful thing when you're starting to look at costs is you can assess what it's going to cost all the way through without spending a dime. And you can go and find experts, people who are spectacular at what they do, and they'll walk through and you can start to build a budget, and they'll do that for free. So those experts typically I usually suggest is find a small business accountant. Not a big business accountant, not an auditor, not a CFO, but an actual small business accountant. And start with them and say, hey, would you have an hour of your time that you can sit down, I'm thinking about starting this business, and I'd love to get your feedback and thoughts. Now they may not give you an hour, they may only give you half an hour, and if they don't give you any time, then you don't want to work with them anyway. But you have to remember that those accountants, those small business attorneys, marketing people, bankers, a lot of them in a lot of ways are their own small businesses. And they need to develop time to build relationships with new clients and your prospective client. So by doing that, start off, sit down with them and say, hey, this is what I'm looking at. What kind of things should I be expecting? And they can help you understand your tax situation. They can understand potentially what you should be looking at in insurance, and they can connect you with a good small business insurance agent so that you know, hey, do I have to have E&O, errors and omissions insurance? How much is it going to cost? If I'm driving around, what's my exposure? What are those different types of things? You can ask your accountant, what sort of structure would you recommend? Should I start as a company? Should I be a limited partnership? Should I be an LLC? What would you suggest? Because they're going to have a good understanding from the compliance and legal standpoint. In addition to that, they're likely going to be able to connect you with a good attorney. Now remember, not just an attorney. If Steve is your brother-in-law and he's a great, divorce attorney, great, good for Steve. Don't use him for setting up your business stuff. A good business attorney, if you pay them a little bit more, they're going to be a lot faster and your total bill will actually be a lot less. But again, you don't have to pay them anything to start with. You can go out and say, hey, help me understand what this is going to cost. What should I do? What are the budgets? And you start building out that whole budget. And that's actually the secret of this whole book. Spoiler alert. If you go through and do all the questions and ask on, and we do step-by-step questions on what to ask people, you'll fill out an entire book out of that. And as a result, you're going to have your own business plan at the end of it. Something that likely you could even take to a bank if you wanted to, or you're just going to be really clear. It's like, yeah, this is a no-brainer, or close, probably not the best thing to do. I would rather you go close, but not quite the best thing. But you're going to be able to start to understand what is it going to cost to build the actual mechanics to run the business. So you've defined sort of what your offering is and how you're going to be and what your uniqueness is and what's it cost to get up to speed there. Then the second component is what's it going to cost to actually build the structure and the business components around it. And you'd be amazed. You can get away with $1,000 maybe or less sometimes. A little bit more, a little bit less, depends. But you can also spend a ton of money. Now the third thing is where a lot of people throw a lot of money, and I think it's one of those areas that you got to be really careful. And that's with how are people going to know you and how are people going to find you. People are like, oh God, I got to have a website. I got to do marketing. I got to do AdWords. I have to be on the gram and all this other stuff. I'm not sure you really do, particularly if you're doing a practice. Regardless of what the practice is, if you can start early, there's 10 different ways in the book that we talk about how you can do outreach and start to create relationships that cost you zero money. There's ways that you can do this to where maybe you go back to those people that you talked to originally and said, hey, what did you like about your business? What did you not like about your business? And they say, yeah, you know what? I don't like working with this type of person, or these guys are too small, or whatever. And if you get 3 of those, I'll contract them out. I'll refer them to you. Or maybe say, look, I really appreciate you investing the time and I like who you are and it feels like we share our values and similar page. I'd be willing to do work for you. You can resell my work and I'll do it at a discount. But it's going to be, there's ways that we talk about over and over and over in here. on how you can safely transition to where maybe you even have contracts in place before you even go and build your entities, before you do those other components on what you're looking to do. And you know without a doubt that if you're getting ready to jump ship, you're going to go from one to the other. You can do it safely. So, a long story short is I've built practices where I've invested $100,000 and candidly some of it fell flat. I've done other times where it cost me almost nothing and done really well with it. The most important piece and how much it's going to cost you is how much are you willing to do, and are you willing to create a strategy to make sure that you are going to be successful with it. So if you found any value with this, feel free to please subscribe to this channel. If you have questions, reach out to us. You can go to Aspiring Solopreneur, or you're welcome to put them in the chat. And there's a lot of other questions out there. And if you have specific videos you'd like us to produce, if you have questions, let us know. Happy to help. Look forward to hearing from you. Keep smiling.